So we are just days away from the Massachusetts special election to fill the seat vacated by the late Senator Ted Kennedy. And with Republican Scott Brown gaining ground on Democrat Martha Coakley, the left is preparing to pull out all of the stops should the GOP pull off a major upset on Tuesday. Now, in order to preserve their supermajority in the Senate long enough to push through their health care bill, Massachusetts Secretary of State William Galvin, who is a Democrat, could delay seating Scott Brown. Now, Galvin claims state law would prohibit him from seating the winner for at least 15 days after the election. But wouldn't you know it, this hasn't always been the case. No, when the Democrats needed an extra vote in order to override a veto by President George W. Bush, the state's laws were bypassed, and Nikki Tsongas was seated just days after winning a special election back in 2007. So will Democrats sink to this level in order to save their government takeover of health care? Joining me now with more is the former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Newt has an online free newsletter you can get and sign up for at newt.org. Mr. Speaker, good to see you.
Good to be with you.
All right, so first of all, Scott Brown is in this. He was down by 9. He was in single digits. He's even up by a point in one poll. But let's say a week from this past Tuesday, let's say on Tuesday he wins. And let's say they try and pull these shenanigans and not seat him. What happens then?
Well, I don't think that can happen. I believe that the country, first of all, as you can already tell, this is now a national focus of attention, unlike almost any special election I've ever seen. He raised $1,300,000 the other day on the internet in one day from people who are donating. He's had all sorts of celebrity endorsements. Stuart Rothenberg, who does an analysis of elections, came out today and said that if the positive news keeps going, that he believes that Scott Brown's going to win. He said this race is now a toss-up, but it's a toss-up with all the momentum on Scott Brown's side. I was told earlier today that a number of labor unions are trying to bus people in from various labor places around the country, Baltimore, Philadelphia, because they can't get enough workers who are willing to help the Democratic nominee in Massachusetts. So I think there's a real chance he's going to win. If he does win, Wednesday morning, late Tuesday night, I mean, you're going to be covering this. Everybody's going to be covering this. And by Wednesday morning, it'll be obvious to the country that the president has suffered a stunning repudiation. Now, I don't believe at that moment that the president and Senator, the Senate Majority Leader and other people could possibly decide that they're going to stiff the American people.
Wait a minute.
Reject an election.
Wait a minute. This is the same president that we have 8 times on videotape promising full transparency, all negotiations on health care would be on C-SPAN. This is the same Senate that bribed Mary Landrieu and Ben Nelson, and now has made a special deal to exempt the collective bargaining agreements of their union pals. You doubt they would try this? I don't.
Well, I believe that there's a practical impossibility. I mean, you and I mean, we'll see. You've been more correct about how radical President Obama was than I was in the last campaign. So maybe you're right. But I will predict to you, any effort to block the people of Massachusetts from having the senator they elect will lead to such an explosion across the whole country that it would be ungovernable. The American people are not going to tolerate. I mean, it's one thing that, the president's broken his word on putting the negotiations on C-SPAN. Everybody now knows that. We've all seen the video. You've shown the video. We all understand the president broke his word. People get even with that in 2012. Harry Reid's going to face his voters, and I think he's going to get defeated in November of this year. But for them to try, in a dictatorial way, to reject the wishes of the people of Massachusetts, to play games with an elected office, I think would literally lead to such an explosion of anger across the country that it would threaten the very survival of the Democratic Party as an institution, because I think people would be in such a rage. And I think, frankly, a number of Democratic senators would not go along with it. I think you'd find some Democratic senators who said, I'm not going to give you my vote to bring this bill up until you seat the duly elected senator from Massachusetts.
You mean just like, who would have thought they would be bribed with 300 million taxpayer dollars?
I'll give you a simple test. Yeah. Call Joe Lieberman and ask Joe Lieberman if they refuse to seat the winner from Massachusetts, will he stop them from bringing the bill up until the winner is seated?
Let me ask you a big picture question. What does it mean as I think one of the most important midterm elections in our lifetime. Now, you were involved in a revolution where the Republicans took power for the first time in 40 years. You took 54 seats back in 1994. Big picture, what does it mean when the Democratic Party today has to fight for their life in Massachusetts, the People's Republic? What does that mean? What does that say about you know?
Look,
go ahead.
You know, I've been very privileged to be involved twice in years like this. 1980, when I worked as a freshman congressman with the Reagan campaign, and 1994, when as the Republican whip I helped lead the Contract with America campaign. Governor Haley Barbour wrote me last week and said he thinks the Democrats are in worse shape this year than they were at this time in 1994. And I think he's probably right. What I see out there now, what you see in Massachusetts, is this deep, powerful feeling among moderate Democrats. And I agree, by the way, with Governor Palin in your last interview. I think there are a lot of moderate Democrats. They may not be serving in office in Washington, D.C., but there are a lot of voters in this country. Probably a third of the Democratic Party are moderates. And they look at what's going on. They look at the big spending, the big bureaucracy. They look at the stuff that this administration is doing, and they're appalled.
One last question. What does this tell us about how people at least perceive Barack Obama's first year in office?
I think the average American is horrified at the level of spending, at the political arrogance, at the corruption, at the unwillingness to protect Americans rather than worry about the rights of terrorists, at the radicalism that they've displayed. And that's why I think you've seen a drop in support for the Democratic Party. Gallup reported a shift to more people identifying themselves as conservatives. Pretty significant, I think.
And I read this week that you are considering.
Don't start down that road.
What?
We're at the end. The music has started.
I read the.
Be happy.
I read it in the newspaper. You say the newspaper's wrong that you would view yourself as one of maybe 7 or 8 people that would consider a run.
I said they could build a long list, including me, Jay Leno, and anybody else who's looking for a job.
Boy, that is ducking an answer. That's right up there with Clinton.
I hope Jay will forgive me.
All right, Mr. Speaker, thanks for being with us.